this brings us to the last saga of this 9-issue story, which, if you remember from earlier, we labeled as the crash and the burn. And this is when shit completely goes off the rails and just seems like it is rushed to an ending. Granted, they weren't even doing the best job of continuity before that, but this is when Marvel pretty much decided to tell us,
I don't give a fuck.
So we're starting this saga off at issue 7. We open up with Hoffman in like some back room sort of area looking like D-Rabbit before he went out and freestyled for his title of dopest white boy in the trailer park.
But I know something about you. You went to Cranbrook. That's a private school.
And this is when in our post 9/11 trauma-filled world they decide to drop another bombshell. Hoffman is X. The parallel between Howard Mackey going under the alias of X to write this comic and then having an elusive figure named X inside of the story itself just for it to be like canceled and rushed through so fast. I imagine what it must have felt like when you're like playing a pickup game and you decide that you're gonna go for a 3-pointer and then the second that you shoot that bitch you're like, fuck, I wish I had that back. That's not gonna go in. So for some reason, he's also in Philadelphia when this happens, and he delivers a speech that pretty much incites a riot, and he's feeling super proud of himself. But this is where his character is either shown a little bit more to where they were getting to, or they just kind of wrote him to be as big of a dick as possible. He decides to celebrate like how the lead singer of a really shitty Slayer cover band would, after completely destroying a set that they played at the county fair on the stage that nobody goes to. And this motherfucker not only looks the part of that, but also acts that way. We cut to him inside of a dive bar where he's talking up some floozy. So homie is stroking his ego in a manner that I imagine he wishes that she's gonna stroke him later. But his post-riot celebration doesn't last very long, because that's when Orwell comes in and I shit you not, he catches him mid-motorboat and interrupts the whole thing using his mind talking. So Orwell's mute ass walks over. So this poor girl is stuck in between a one-sided conversation because she doesn't know what the hell was going on with Orwell. And pretty much goes like this. Orwell, what's up, my boy? How you doing? You see what I did out there? Yeah, we partying, we celebrating now. I really don't like when you talk to me like that, my guy. I had a huge victory today, and you gonna come up here and bring that shit up? Whoa, what you mean? She's a nice girl. What are you talking about, my guy? Yeah, take your halfway Helen Keller ass out of here. You're gonna come in here with this negativity and ruin my vibe. Hey, yo, fuck you, Orwell. Your dick don't work. Don't ever say that to me. That was one time, bro. One time. Now just watch Marley and Me. Of course I couldn't get it hard. And meanwhile, the poor girl's just over there like, didn't you say you were a movie producer? So after she's rightfully scared off, some lunatic dressed as Uncle Sam shows up and pulls the strap out on Hoffman and is like, I saw you on TV inciting riots. I'm here to preserve America. And so now that Hoffman's vibe is more dead than Bryson's free-falling ass out of that window, fuck you, Bryson, he decides to do what all pathetic guys who don't get play at a bar wish that they could do. Blows the place up. So back to my point of, I don't know if they didn't get the time to develop Hoffman into this downward spiral, or if they really stopped giving a fuck, but he went from master manipulator to just completely crashing out and just being so sporadic that he incites a riot that was televised. Then he goes and tries to get his dick wet at a bar, almost gets shot by somebody, and just blows the place up. Mans is on a crash course to complete and total failure. The same way Bryson crashed through that window to his death. Fuck you, Bryson. So after that, we catch up with Marshall, who has successfully captured everybody from the previous issue. So he has Fagin. We don't get to see Fagin, unfortunately. He has Asher, and he has Milan. So nobody made it very far at all from their actions in the last issue, and it all happens off panel. But surprisingly, Marshall's not torturing anybody in these panels. He has Milan watching everything going on in Philadelphia that Hoffman just did. He's like, I need to know about X. You see all this shit going on? You really want to be a part of that? And everybody instantly folds because fuck it, book's canceled. So while he's interrogating them about the whereabouts of X and X's location, who we now know is Hoffman, even Milan points out that they kind of have this weird back and forth man crush about each other. It's made even weirder the fact that there's multiple scenes where they're looking back at a photo of themselves together and just like having a Nickelback moment. So after issue 7, Fagin, Asher, and Milan are now all working for Marshall. Hoffman is completely unhinged now, and really letting his true colors show. Issue 8 opens up with just panels of different TV screens showing the downfall of all the chapters of the Brotherhood. X-Force is taking him down. The X-Men are taking him down. Charles Xavier is completely mind-freaking one of the mutants, and even Cable joins in the fight, and they're just taking down all chapters of the Brotherhood. Orwell and Hoffman having another one of their one-part conversation, one-part staring match things. So they revealed that the Brotherhood was actually started by Orwell, Hoffman, and Marshall, and they agreed that they were going to do something to change mutant kind. Marshall and Hoffman ended up having animosity towards each other when Hoffman took over as leader, when they agreed that they wouldn't have a leader, that they would be more of a collaborative effort. And that's why Marshall ended up dipping and made it his sole purpose in life to bring down Hoffman and the Brotherhood, because they are forever trapped in a dick showing contest that only gratifies themselves. So after another mini crash out of Hoffman, Fagin, Asher, and Milan show up, and Hoffman sends them on this dummy mission to kind of test their loyalties. He understands that they were captured by Marshall and they somehow escaped, but he wants to test them to see if they're legit, if they're still down with the cause. You got 3 people left. The rest of your chapters have fallen. Why are you potentially sending them to their death if you still have this grand vision of being the leader of the Brotherhood?
That doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Hoffman sends them on a mission to go and kill a traitor who is allegedly leaking information about the whereabouts of all the Brotherhood. So them working with Marshall, they're trying to concoct a plan of how they're going to get out of this. If they don't deliver on this mission, Hoffman is going to kill them. But if they do deliver on this mission, Marshall's going to kill them. And this is when Fagin's complete change of character shows full force, because this motherfucker is just wanting to dip. A few issues ago, man was full blown for the cause, even cock-blocking Bryson more than the sidewalk did after he crashed out that window. Fuck you, Bryson. Under the guise of, we need to be doing more revolutionary shit. And now he just wants to run away from everything. But the other two kind of bring him back down and are just like, hey, there's no escape out of this. So they decide that they're going to go see Marshall and get his help to get out of this, and with the promises that they're ultimately going to deliver him X or Hoffman. So when they go to see Marshall, this motherfucker is playing Weekend at Bernie's Dance Edition. He's dancing with a dead body, and then he's telling them that the plan is to subdue the person that they're supposed to capture, and that he has the perfect body double, which is the dead body that he's dancing with. And I imagine that this is when it would start to click with them, that they're just kind of caught in between 2 psychopaths who are only out for self-gratification. So Marshall telling them, hey, this is the perfect match. You're gonna go subdue who Hoffman is calling a traitor, do a little body swap after I do my little jig with this thing, and then everything's gonna be good. This is where another one of those pages comes through, where he's just looking at the picture of him and Hoffman together with Orwell, and once again going off about how he's gonna ultimately win this contest. So this whole book just kind of threw aside any good points they were making about like the mistreatment of mutants and turned it into a lover's quarrel between fragile, hyper-masculine men. So anyway, the main 3 being Asher, Fagin, and Milan show up to the door of where the traitor is supposed to be. They knock on the door, and then a blonde lady opens it, completely different from the brunette man Marshall had at the little disco thing. And I don't know what kind of time she was on, but she transforms into like this Hulk looking being rocking a Brock Lesnar ponytail, and she just yokes up Fagin, and Fagin's like, yo, can I get some help with this? Milan counters using some of her powers, and we finally get to see what Fagin's powers are, and he turns into like a sticker bush. All that anticipation I had throughout all of these issues, just to find out that Fagin's powers is he turns hornier than Asher was in issue 1. And speaking of issue 1, when he was getting jumped, why didn't he just use his goddamn power? They knew he was a mutant. They were jumping a mutant, whatever. So they end up subduing the target, and then they decide that they're gonna go ahead with the body swap, which obviously wasn't gonna work. So Asher actually uses his head and is like, well, we'll put the body here, I'm gonna blow the place up. After that, they finally meet up with Hoffman, and he's just kind of dumbfounded. And this dumbass is like, well, they actually did it. I guess I won't have to kill them. Yet. Dog, you don't have anybody left, bro.
Cause if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
And then he tells them that he has a bright idea, a way that they're gonna send a message. They're gonna destroy the celebrityism that all these bootlicking mutants have subjected themselves to, and they're gonna kill a member of the X-Force. And Asher's like, oh, so we're gonna kill the orphan, right? The leader of the X-Force? Hoffman just starts berating him. He's like, no, you dumbass motherfucker. Why would we kill him? We're gonna fucking kill Duke.
Hell no, to the no, no,
Oh no.
Which to a point, Dupe being the lovable character that he is and just being so beloved in this timeline makes sense. But dog, Dupe is gonna mop the floor with you motherfuckers. Like, what are you thinking, bro? Like, bro, you are booking squash matches like your WCW and Goldberg's first appearances. Which brings us to issue 9. And with Marvel completely wanting to end this story and bury it so far under the ground no one's gonna see it, they open up at a parade for the X-Force, and also has a quote on one of the opening pages. Pretty much tells us this shit isn't gonna end well for the Brotherhood. Then we actually cut to the Brotherhood. So it's Hoffman, Orwell, and the 3 recruits. And he's trying to give them a motivational speech like, you are all young mutant men's plus Milan, and he sends them off on their way to actually enact this plan of killing Dupe. So as the 3 recruits go off, and Fagin's freaking the fuck out like, dog, what are we gonna do? Like, we got the X-Force right here. He's expecting us to attack them. They're gonna fucking kill us if we attack them, and we're gonna fucking die if we don't attack them. The 3 recruits come up with a different plan, which is they can just talk to the X-Force and let them know like, hey, there's a plot on your life here. This is what's going on. Can you help us? And that would be their best chance of survival. And meanwhile, Hoffman and Marshall are just playing IRL mutant chess. Hoffman actually has eyes on Marshall, and he's just like, look at you standing there, overconfident, you dumbass bitch. Fuck you. And Marshall is like just kind of surveying his surroundings and just like, it's a dumbass plan and I got your ass, which is just watch. And this is when Asher starts kind of acting a little fucking childish again. So while they're going to enact this plan to get close to the X-Force, he's even like, you think they'll accept applications? Like, the X-Force, you know, they kind of give me hope for everything. And Milan is entertaining all this and telling him like, it's because of what they represent. They're heroes, which takes away from this story for me. Because the biggest thing going into how they became members of the Brotherhood was the atrocities that mutants were facing, whether it was Malcolm Reeves and their experiments and profiting off of mutant suffering, or it was the discrimination that Mikey was facing and the traumatic shit that happened to him after everybody found out he was a mutant. He wasn't treated good before that, but after the fact, he was treated even worse. He had motherfuckers trying to kill him in his school, and there could have been good dialogue in this about celebrityism of the X-Force. Meanwhile, actual mutants are suffering at the hands of discrimination and prejudice against them. But yet the ones that are popularized and the ones that are marketable are being able to thrive, succeed. They're having a parade thrown for them. There could have been a good discussion about this, which maybe wasn't going to be the point of the Brotherhood at all. However, with them rushing to the conclusion this fast, throwing in this dialogue, which completely takes away from the development that these characters have already had, is why I named the video what I did, because they knew how to completely ruin this story to where I don't think anybody is really asking for revivals of any of these characters. Anyway, as they're trying to approach the X-Force and get close enough that they can shoot them a warning and let them know the situation, you have fucking Quasimodo that just kind of peeks up after instructions from Orwell, and he's just like, that's right, you motherfuckers.
I'm gonna clamp your body parts off one by one.
And the mutants who are still rocking with Hoffman and Orwell don't even get a chance to jump the barricade. He just yells that he's gonna kill the mutie traitors. The X-Force is ready. They're on go like, bitch, you gonna kill who? So they jump the barricade going the other way because it ain't shit sweet with them, my guy. Next, we finally get a confrontation between Marshall and Hoffman face to face, rather than these weird moments of them looking at pictures of themselves together. So Hoffman has a mutant called Miss Fingers wrap up Marshall and just kind of gives him the stink meter treatment.
Oh yeah! Look at you! You was popping all that good shit a second ago!
So Hoffman thinks because he has Marshall restrained that he's won, that he has this conflict in the bag. Meanwhile, we're about to have this standoff between other Brotherhood mutants, I guess, and the X-Force, and they're about to clash with our 3 recruits stuck in the middle. And it's at this point where all hope is lost of them getting out of this in any decent way. Fagin decides, you know what, I'm gonna transform real quick, and anybody in his way, he's gonna fight, but he's gonna just do his best to get the fuck out of this situation. And Milan's right by his side in this, because there is no way they're getting out of this in any way that they thought. Marshall obviously doesn't care, enough to the point where he gave them a horrible body double for a plan that Asher eventually had to save. And now they have the extremely trained X-Force coming full speed at them, as well as hostile mutants on the other side. Fagin ends up getting clawed across the chest. Milan gets mollywopped in the face and then porcupined to death. Asher gets sucked into a teleportation hole directly above the convertible that the X-Force was just in, completely totaling the car like when Ryan O'Reilly plays Mayhem on those commercials. And that's when Hoffman's narcissistic ass says one of the dumbest lines. This motherfucker goes, "And so falls the last of my young Judases." You're not Jesus, dog. I mean, I'm not religious, but Jesus would be turning water into wine and multiplying food to feed the people. And what the fuck have you done? Motorboated some girl who thought you were a movie producer in a dive bar? That's like the beginning of motherfuckers in AA when they tell their story of how they got sober. Like at best, if you tried to turn your life around, you could maybe start a podcast like Steve-O. Anyway, after Hoffman drops that line, Marshall's trying to talk and his mouth is covered by that Miss Fingers bitch. And Hoffman's like, nah, release his mouth, Miss Finger. And that's when Marshall's like, guess what, motherfucker? That wasn't the last of the Judases. And Orwell's silent ass pops up right behind Hoffman and does him the same way that Craig did Debo. Because when all is said and done, Hoffman wasn't even making shit good for Orwell. Like, all he was doing was just having one-sided conversations with him and not really listening to any of the points that I assume Orwell was making. But Marshall reveals that Orwell has kind of been working with him the whole time and feeding him the information that he was wondering how he was getting so easily, which makes me question like why he didn't just tell him where Hoffman was. But at the end of the day, what fun is that when they're having this I'm better than you chess game going on using mutants as pawns? But Marshall ultimately tells Hoffman like, you got what you wanted, man. Your time in the spotlight. So a little scuffle ensues, and that's when Asher, whose blood is everywhere after getting his shit rocked by the X-Force, decides, you know what, I'm gonna send one last message before I'm out, since I was kind of the main character in this story. And he blows up Hoffman, Orwell, and Marshall right before he bleeds out and dies. Now, when I say their intentions were to kill this story, bury it so deep that no one would find it, and frame it in such a way that nobody would even ask for it later, these last 2 pages are the prime example of that. So Asher bleeds out, and the last thing that he sees before he dies is Dupe flying over him. And then right after that, the orphan takes off his helmet and is like, so, anybody have any idea what happened here? The end of the revolution. Oh, and the last panel is them walking away from the car that Asher's dead body is on. Oh, and so it ends. And end? It definitely did. Now, from my research and the one interview that I could find where Howard Mackey actually touches on this story, the intentions from the beginning were to write a story about how an individual gets caught up in an extremist group and how they're indoctrinated into their system of beliefs. I think they had a solid chance of telling a very dynamic story with nuance and diving into the psychology from a unique perspective. But with the events of 9/11 happening and this extreme fear of terrorist organizations and what they're capable of and how many innocent lives could be lost, they cut that short. And the amount of editor changes and even pencilers for this series is kind of crazy. So it makes me question, did the plot change? If it wouldn't have been canceled, would it have still not really touched on deep psychological issues or have any nuance to it and just end up being where we see the main characters as more of just pawns in a bigger game between people? From my research, I gather that it was never meant to glorify the Brotherhood's actions or the actions of any of the characters in the story. So a permadeath conclusion with no real victories for the main characters makes sense. But at the same point, what would be the purpose of the story itself if the characters were unlikable and a rush to a permadeath? And the ending just kind of felt a little like undeserved, where you want to feel bad for these characters for getting sucked into this, but they don't give you enough to really care about. We had 3 issues of Asher's origin, we had 3 issues of Milan's origin, and then afterwards it's let's rush them to this final showdown where everybody's gonna die. And the almost comical last portion of the story with the, oh, it's the end of the revolution, oh, let's walk away. It somewhat felt like a slap in the face of any invested reader. And I didn't go into this knowing any of this information. I read issue 1 and then decided, hey, I want to deep dive more into this story. I got to know what happened. Just for it to feel like a moment where Marvel's like, you want to read one of our stories? All right, cool. Yeah, let me hear. I got something for you. Big fuck you. Which I can't put too much blame on Marvel or Howard Mackey. With the nature of how everything was at the time, I can get it. I can understand it. Despite my rants about the ending, I did have some fun with it. Comics are meant to entertain us and tell great stories. Like this one had the potential to be a great story, but was purposefully shut down to where it's not really remembered too fondly. Anyway, I've been ranting for a while, and I feel like this video is now deader than Bryson was after he fell out of that window. Fuck you, Bryson. I hope you have a good rest of your night. I hope you go out and support your local comic shop. That's going to be the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you go out and read some comic books. Peace.
Not the villain that you think you is. Cause I never touch raw chicken dip with duck sauce. Cutting with my lunch card. Daddy was in 1 yard. I was singing Dove bars. Just that I was dumb on. Everywhere I